to my next part. And if you've watched the last part, then you know that these videos are about video complaints to the once famous Confused Matthews. Now note, I don't hate Confused Matthews. I love Confused Matthews videos. They're great. They're funny. Sometimes they make me laugh, and sometimes they make me think. But in this instance, all I'm really trying to do is unconfuse Matthew. I just cannot quite understand what he's so confused about. So anyway, this is the next part of my saga. And here we are. We are going to review Star Wars Episode 2, The Clone Wars. Attack of the Clones. So now, and let me make another thing perfectly clear, because I got some weird comments on the last videos I did. I am not, and I repeat, I am not reviewing these movies. I am somewhat re-reviewing them off of Confused Matthew's review. If you will, in a way, I'm actually reviewing his review. So with no further ado, let's get into this movie and let's review Confused Matthew's review. Isn't that confusing? Here we go. Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. Okay, here we go. So, since Confused Matthew has already given you direct details about the beginning and the middle and the plot, he's confused about the plot. He was confused about the plot in the first one. Okay. They're worried about separatists or whatever. I don't know exactly what that means. But I know they're worried about something, and they're trying to prevent something catastrophic from happening. Now, of course, if we know something catastrophic might happen, but what they're doing here is they're trying to figure out a diplomatic solution to the problem. And Confused Matthew also points out that it's been 10 years since they rescued Anakin from Naboo. And his question was, why didn't the Jedi go after Naboo and free all the slaves? Since it's been 10 years, they could at least probably freed her as a slave. Well, here's the problem. There are two problems in this. The Jedi cannot simply just go over to a planet and, kill everybody and take the slaves back to the Republic. And they can't just go over there and turn the place into a republic where the Republic is involved. There are reasons for this, logical and maybe not so logical. The logical reasoning is the Jedi are in fact the keepers of the peace. And if they go over there all willy-nilly and start trying to free slaves, wouldn't that result in some kind of war? I mean, do the Jedi have some sort of, maybe there's some rule of the Prime Directive which as in Star Trek does not allow the Jedi to interfere with the natural order of planetarian of any other alien life. I mean, maybe that's why the Jedi can't do this. Now, I'm not saying the Jedi couldn't have gone over there and maybe tried to negotiate to free the slaves. But maybe the Jedi had a much more important, wait a minute, let me back up. Another thing confused Matthew is confused about is the fact that the Jedi are disputing border disputes and tax disputes and whatnot have you. But maybe it's not just all black and white like the confused Matthew says. Maybe the Jedi have a prime directive, as I said before. And yes, it sounds like I'm repeating myself. So let me just conclude this by saying they just didn't want to start another war. They already have a problem on their hands with this problem that apparently has occurred over the past 10 years. Or maybe they've had other problems in the past 10 years in which they just didn't have the time to go over there and free slaves. And another problem I have with this is confused Matthew keeps saying the same thing over and over again. The Jedi, defenders of the keepers of the peace, my ass. So I just wanted to point that out. Now he can come back and say what he wants to about me saying what I just said doesn't make sense and why didn't the Jedi go over there and blah blah blah. But that's the reason. I mean, they have a prime directive probably. And like I said, they don't want to start a war between Tatooine and the Republic. So it's just, I mean, they just couldn't go over there and free slaves without starting a war. So I think they are keepers of the peace in this sense. And another complaint. Let's pause this for a minute, shall we? Okay, Anakin Skywalker has knowledge of the Force, and he has advanced knowledge of the Force. In fact, he's the most powerful he has the highest count of the Force living inside his system. And yes, another thing confused Matthew talks about is Anakin Skywalker is an asshole. He talks down about Obi-Wan Kenobi and he complains why isn't he most powerful Jedi and blah blah blah. He wants to save his mother, blah blah blah. You know, here's the thing. He's a young guy. He's a young guy and he's a learner. He's a student of Obi-Wan Kenobi. And he has to continuously call him master all the time. I mean, that's got to be ridiculous. I mean, think about it. If you're a young student and you know that you could be more powerful than your teacher, and yet your teacher keeps holding you back. In other words, you pass test after test after test after test, and here you have a teacher that keeps holding you back in the same grade. Wouldn't you be a little upset? I mean, I will admit that Anakin Skywalker is a little bit whiny. And so was Simba. Remember when you mentioned Simba in The Lion King and he was an asshole? Well, you can't very well say that Simba was an asshole because he was a little kid. And if you're a little kid, and another thing, his father's king of this whole entire country. I mean, when you're a little rich kid and your father is a king of the entire country, of course you're going to be a spoiled brat. And that's exactly what Simba is. Nothing more than a spoiled little brat. He's not an asshole. Now, as an adult lion, yes, you can say, okay, Simba's a freaking asshole. I understand this. But now, getting back to Anakin Skywalker, and this is the last thing I will say about Anakin Skywalker. So let's fast forward this movie a little bit, shall we? And by the way, let me just mention that in Batman and Robin, Robin was a whiny little asshole, and he whined about every single little thing that Bruce was trying to teach him, and he whined and whined. He was a little whiny bitch in that movie. And yes, Batman and Robin is a bad example because it's a bad movie. It's a terrible movie. It's one of the worst movies I've ever seen in the history of my fucking life. But this movie is not a bad movie.